Okay, sixth graders, as we think about our reading this week, you kind of had a practice week last week. These are the things that we should be looking for um, when we're reading. So the first one says, stop when you notice trouble. These books were picked because of the trouble that you might find in them. You might, as a sixth grader, be able to relate to that trouble, or it might be something that you've just heard about, or seen in movies, or read in other books. But you should stop at that trouble and you should think about how it affects you, the main character and the other ones. Then you should expect what you think at first to change. And when you think your thinking has changed, you should reflect on that. You should take a moment. We don't, as readers, often stop and think or reflect. And so I'd like you to try to do that in your reading this week. Then you're going to weigh relationships for positives and negatives, right? In our own lives, we have things that are positive and things that are negative in each relationship, right? I love my mom and I have so many positive things, but we've had a few troubles as well, right? And so you have to think of positives and negatives. Then study how each character influences the relationship. So you're going to put your main character maybe in the center of a page, and then you're going to have arrows to the other characters, and you might write about how they affect each other. Then you're going to analyze how and why power affects relationships. Power is, when you think of it, someone who is the stronger character. It doesn't mean stronger physically, but rather their character trait. What makes them have more power? And then reflect on that. And then finally, you're going to look for character trait clashes. This one's kind of fun to think about because you can name the trait and then the trait of the other character who they're clashing with, and then in the middle, kind of say why. So let me go over a few examples. I just used the story that we used at the beginning of the year. The characters were Will and his brother Skip. So this one illustrates the weighing relationships for positive and negative. So I put a column for positive and then one for negative. I listed them, so notice I had dialogue, I had some action, and then down below, I kind of tracked it from the beginning of the story to the end. Obviously, this isn't the whole story. You're going to have probably a lot more of these, but it's kind of a cool way to track it. Another example is putting a main character. So for this one, instead of starting with Will, I started with Skip in the middle because Skip offers some interesting perspective on my main character, Will. And so these arrows, the arrow from Will to Skip is how Will affects Skip. And the arrow from Skip to Will, I would write on this side of how Skip affects Will. And then same for the mom and same for the dad. So that kind of shows the you're studying how each character influences the relationship. So you have a character in the middle and then each character around that one. Another thing you could do is the power struggles. So, like I talked about, you're going to see in your reading some power struggles between characters. So, in my story, Will has a pretty good relationship with his mom. So, I would say that the mom actually has more power because Will is often willing to listen to her and is comforted by her. Then I would go on to the dad and then Skip. And then I decided I want to do Skip as well because sometimes power struggles are similar. Maybe Will and his dad and Skip and his dad have similar power struggles. And then the last one. I like this one because I enjoy thinking about character traits, and so this is where the character traits collide. And so Will is a little bit more of a timid character, and his dad is much stronger. His dad is pretty opinionated and strong-willed, and so Will's gonna have quite a few clashes with his dad, but Will also has some clashes with his brother Skip. So I'm going to illustrate those there. So those are just a few examples of what you could do for your journal pages this week. You're really trying to think about these things. You are also thinking about the 3 questions that we have during our Google Meet time. So during our Google Meet time, these are the 3 things that we're going to be talking about. I just want to clear anything up from last week. Your answers should be getting a little bit more thoughtful, and now that you've done it once, you kind of know what to do. So number 1, the social issue. How does the main character respond? I want examples from the text. I want you to maybe name a character trait of your main character, and I want you to have a thought out answer of how the social issue is shown through your character. Then number 2, this one is going to require you to have page numbers. If you're doing an audiobook, then you might just be saying, oh, this happened early on in the listening, or when I was about 30 minutes into listening. Be specific. You should have something related to dialogue or inner thinking. Be sure to have a good example or multiple examples for number 2. And then number 3, your connection needs to be pretty strong. I'm expecting that you've thought about number 3 before you come to your Google Meet. So you should have a written response for what book you could compare and contrast. Why would you say it's the same, and why would you say it's different?